Dr. Olivia Grant had never felt lighter in her entire life. The medical conference hall aboard Station Harmony seemed almost dreamlike as she walked between rows of seats filled with beings from across the galaxy. Her steps felt bouncy, almost like skipping, and she had to consciously slow herself down to avoid looking foolish in front of the assembled scientists. Around her, the other attendees moved differently. The Quillen delegates, bird-like creatures with iridescent feathers, wore bulky mechanical frames strapped to their legs and torsos. The insected Trillic researchers floated in small anti-gravity bubbles that hummed softly as they drifted past. Even the sturdy-looking chess representatives, beings who breathed methane and stood on four muscular limbs, relied on exoskeleton supports that whirred with each movement. Olivia realized with growing wonder that she was the only person in the entire hall walking under her own power. No assistance, no machinery, just her own two legs carrying her weight as naturally as breathing. A commotion near the refreshment area drew her attention. One of the Quillen scientists had collapsed, their breathing rapid and shallow. Olivia rushed over, her medical training kicking in instantly. The creature's colleagues were calling for emergency services, their voices high and panicked. "Let me help," Olivia said, kneeling beside the fallen scientist. The Quillen's eyes, large and golden, focused on her with what looked like confusion. "You move without support," the scientist wheezed. "How do you bear such crushing weight?" Olivia checked the being's vital signs, noting the rapid heartbeat and stressed breathing. "What weight? The station gravity feels light to me." A Trillic doctor arrived, floating in their antigrav sphere. "Human physician, please step back. This is a gravity collapse. Standard station environment is 0.8 standard units. For Quillens, this is extremely taxing." The words hit Olivia like a revelation. 0.8 standard units. On Earth, they called it 0.8 G. She had assumed it felt light because she had been in space for weeks, adjusting to lower gravity on the transport ship. But now she understood. Station Harmony was calibrated to what most species considered normal, and to them, even this felt heavy. The Quillen was stabilized and taken to medical bay. Olivia found herself drawn into conversation with the Trillic doctor, whose name was Halen. They settled into a quiet corner of the hall, and Halen explained the reality of galactic civilization. "Most spacefaring species evolved on what you would call low-gravity worlds," Halen said, their translator device rendering the clicks and chirps into standard speech. "Between 0.3 and 0.6 standard units, anything above 0.7 is considered a heavy world, rare, difficult, dangerous." "And Earth?" Olivia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "One full standard unit. A heavy world by any measure. When your species applied to join the Galactic Coalition, there was significant debate about whether contact should even be maintained. Many believed humans would be too fragile, that your high-gravity environment would have made you weak and unable to adapt to space travel." Olivia almost laughed. Humans weak. They had conquered mountains, dove to ocean depths, run marathons across deserts, but she understood now. From the galactic perspective, Earth was an extreme environment. Humans were the extremophiles. The conference proceeded, but Olivia found it hard to focus on the presentations about exoplanet research and atmospheric analysis. Her mind kept returning to the implications of what she had learned. Humanity's normal was the galaxy's nightmare. On the second day, everything changed. An emergency alert interrupted the session on stellar classification. The hall's central display activated, showing Administrator Quinn, a floating jellyfish-like being who managed coalition science operations. "We have a situation," Quinn announced, their tentacles pulsing with agitation. "Research Expedition Gamma-7 has made an emergency landing on planet designation Titan's Crown. The expedition includes 15 scientists from 7 member species. They are stranded." Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. Olivia leaned forward, listening intently. Titan's Crown is a newly cataloged world with unusual properties. Initial scans suggested standard conditions. However, the expedition has reported that surface gravity is 2.1 standard units. All team members are experiencing severe physiological distress. They have approximately 6 days of life support remaining. The hall erupted in concerned chatter. 2.1, more than double what most species could tolerate. Olivia's mind raced through the medical implications. For beings adapted to point 0.3 or point 0.5 gravity, 2.1 would be devastating. Hearts would struggle to pump blood. Bones might fracture under their own weight. Even breathing would become laborious. Coalition emergency services are prepared to respond, Quinn continued. However, we face a significant obstacle. No known species in the Coalition can physically survive on Titan's Crown's surface for more than a few minutes. Remote drone operations have failed due to atmospheric interference and gravity stress on equipment. We are exploring all options. Olivia stood up. Her voice rang clear across the hall. Humans can do it. The silence that followed felt heavy, ironic given the topic. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and optical organs focused on her. Quinn's tentacles went still. Explain, the administrator said. Earth's gravity is 1 full unit. Titan's Crown is 2.1. That's difficult but not impossible. We have athletes who train in high-gravity conditions. We have people who work in extreme environments. If you need someone who can physically endure that world, humans are your answer. Halen floated closer. You would volunteer your species for this. The risk is enormous. We do not know if human physiology can truly withstand such conditions for extended periods. Olivia met the Trillich's multifaceted gaze. 15 scientists are going to die if someone doesn't reach them. You're telling me we're the only ones who even have a chance. How can we not try? The debate that followed lasted 3 hours. Coalition officials expressed doubts, concerns, and outright disbelief. But the mathematics were unavoidable. Humans could survive 1G Titan's Crown was 2.1. The ratio was far more favorable than for any other species. Finally, Quinn made the announcement. The Coalition Council grants permission for a human rescue expedition to Titan's Crown. Dr. Grant, you will serve as medical officer and human liaison. Assemble your team. The galaxy is watching. As the hall emptied, Olivia remained seated, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. It felt heavier than any gravity. The gymnasium on Luna Station looked more like a torture chamber than a training facility. Commander Rachel Odom watched through the observation window as another volunteer collapsed, face down on the reinforced floor. The gravity in that room was set to 2.1, matching Titan's Crown exactly. The volunteer had lasted 12 minutes. Next group, Rachel called into the intercom. Her voice remained steady, but inside she felt the growing pressure of impossible expectations. They had 48 hours to select and prepare a team for a rescue mission that defied all common sense. The gymnasium door opened. 4 new volunteers entered, each one carefully chosen from different specializations. A firefighter from Vancouver, a deep-sea salvage diver from Indonesia, a Himalayan mountain guide, a marathon runner from Kenya. All of them had responded to Earth's call for people who understood endurance. Rachel watched as they experienced 2.1 gravity for the first time. The change was instant and brutal. Bodies that moved with easy confidence under Earth's pull suddenly became leaden, clumsy. The firefighter dropped to one knee within seconds. The diver managed to stay standing but swayed dangerously. The mountain guide took 3 steps and sat down hard. Only the marathon runner remained upright, though sweat already beaded on her forehead. Walk to the far wall, Rachel instructed. 30 meters, take your time. What followed was painful to watch. Each step became a calculated effort. Legs that normally lifted without thought now required conscious force. The firefighter made it halfway before stopping, hands on knees, chest heaving. The diver used a strange shuffling gait, keeping their center of gravity low. The mountain guide crawled the last 10 meters. The runner completed the distance but collapsed immediately after. Dr. Olivia Grant entered the observation room, carrying data tablets. "How many have we tested?" 63 volunteers. So far, the longest anyone has maintained function is 40 minutes. And that was just walking. We need people who can work, think, make decisions, perform rescues, all under sustained 2.1 gravity. Olivia pulled up medical readouts. Heart rates are spiking to dangerous levels. Blood pressure reads like they're having cardiac events. Muscles are tearing under the strain. "Rachel, I'm not sure humans can actually do this." "They have to," Rachel said flatly, "because 15 scientists are going to die if we don't." The training evolved rapidly. Rachel brought in specialists who understood how to move efficiently under extreme conditions. A yoga instructor taught breathing techniques to maximize oxygen intake when every breath felt like lifting weights. A physical therapist showed them how to use mechanical advantage, letting bones carry weight instead of muscles. A former astronaut explained how to conserve energy during extended high-stress operations. Slowly, candidates began to last longer. 20 minutes became 30. 30 became an hour. Rachel identified the key trait that separated those who could endure from those who couldn't. It wasn't strength. The strongest volunteers often failed first, their muscles burning out from trying to power through. It wasn't speed. Quick movements in high gravity led to injury and exhaustion. It was patience, the ability to accept discomfort as normal and continue functioning anyway. She built her team around that principle. Olivia was already selected as medical officer. For the pilot, Rachel chose Yuki, a woman who had spent 3 years flying supply runs to deep-sea mining platforms. Yuki understood how to stay calm when every system screamed danger. Derek joined as engineer, a man who had worked on high-altitude construction projects where thin air and exhaustion were daily realities. Samuel came from search and rescue, someone who had pulled people from collapsed buildings and knew how to function when everything hurt. Lee, the communications specialist, had survived a training accident that left her with chronic pain, teaching her to work through constant physical discomfort. 6 people. 6 ordinary humans who would attempt something no one in the galaxy believed possible. The alien observers watched the training with undisguised fascination. Halen floated in their antigrav sphere beside the observation window, studying the humans as they learned to exist in an environment that would kill the Trillic instantly. "They are suffering greatly," Halen observed. "Every movement causes pain, yet they continue." Rachel nodded. "Pain is information. It tells you something is wrong, but you can choose what to do with that information. You can stop or you can keep going. And humans choose to keep going. Some of us, when the reason is good enough." On the final day before departure, Rachel assembled the team in the 2.1 gravity chamber. They had been living in high gravity for 6 hours at a stretch now, building tolerance. Their bodies had adapted somewhat. Hearts grew slightly more efficient. Muscles learned to fire in new patterns, but none of it made the experience comfortable. "Everyone sit," Rachel instructed. They lowered themselves carefully, moving like elderly people despite being in their physical prime. "I need to be honest with you. The medical data isn't promising." Dr. Grant. Olivia brought up projections. "Under sustained 2.1 gravity, your bodies will deteriorate. Stress fractures are likely. Cardiovascular damage is possible. We'll be pushing human physiology beyond tested limits. Even if the mission succeeds, you may have permanent injuries." The room fell silent. Then Samuel spoke, his voice rough. "The scientists on Titan's crown didn't ask to be stranded there. They went exploring, same as humans have done forever. Same risk, different world. If we don't help them, we're saying their lives matter less because they look different than us." Yuki nodded. "Besides, someone has to set the bar for what humans can endure. Might as well be us. Derek leaned back against the wall, wincing at the effort. My grandfather used to say that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about being terrified and doing the thing anyway. I'm terrified, but I'm going. Lee just raised her hand, volunteering without words. Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. Not the crushing weight of high gravity, but something else. Pride, maybe. Or recognition of what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of species who had never needed to push themselves this hard. The ship departs in 8 hours, Rachel said. Rest now. Sleep in normal gravity while you can. Because once we're on Titan's crown, there's no relief until everyone is safe. As the team filed out, moving with the careful deliberation they had all learned, Halen approached Rachel. I have been studying your species since contact was established, the Trillic said. I believed I understood humans, but I was wrong. You are not strong because of your gravity. Your gravity made you strong. Rachel considered that. Maybe. Or maybe we just learned that nothing worth doing is ever easy. The rescue ship waited in dock, fueled and ready. Somewhere beyond the stars, 15 scientists counted down their remaining hours, unaware that help was coming on legs that could barely walk. The planet filled the viewscreen like a purple jewel wrapped in storms. Titan's crown rotated slowly beneath the rescue ship Perseverance, its thick atmosphere swirling in patterns that would have been beautiful if they didn't represent mortal danger. Yuki's hands moved across the pilot controls with practiced precision, but Rachel noticed the slight tremor in her fingers. They had been in orbit for 2 hours, preparing for descent while their bodies adjusted to the ship's gradually increasing gravity. The process was meant to ease the transition. It felt more like prolonged drowning. Gravity at 1.5, Yuki announced. Already her voice sounded strained. Increasing to 1.8 for final approach. Derek groaned from his station. Anyone else feel like they're being compressed into a cube? Everyone, Olivia said. She was monitoring their vital signs, watching hearts work harder with each incremental increase. This is just the beginning. Save your energy. The ship shuddered as it entered Titan's crown's upper atmosphere. Yuki fought the controls, her movements slower than they should be. In normal gravity, she could have danced across the panel. Here, every input required deliberate effort. Atmospheric density higher than projected, she reported. Adjusting angle of entry. Rachel forced herself to focus on the mission data rather than the growing ache in her entire body. The stranded expedition was transmitting from coordinates in a canyon system near the planet's equator. Their shelter was intact but failing. Life support had degraded faster than expected. The timeline had compressed from 6 days to 4, and now they were on day 3. Ground contact in 9 minutes, Yuki said. Automated landing sequence is compensating for gravity. I think, maybe, this is weird. The ship dropped through cloud layers that sparked with electrical discharge. Rain hammered against the hull, each droplet carrying more mass than it should. The sound was like being inside a drum during a hailstorm. Landing site 15 kilometers from target, Derek called out. That's the closest flat ground the computer can find. 15 kilometers. On Earth, a long walk. Here it might as well be 100. Rachel did the math in her head. Under 2.1 gravity, carrying equipment with deteriorating physical condition. 2 days minimum. They didn't have 2 days. The landing was controlled chaos. Yuki guided them down through winds that would have grounded any Earth aircraft. The ship's reinforced structure groaned under forces it was never designed to handle. When the landing struts finally touched ground, the impact rattled Rachel's teeth. We're down, Yuki breathed. Not dead, good start. Gravity registering 2.08, Olivia read from her instruments. Close enough to 2.1. Everyone ready. No one was ready, but they began the checklist anyway. Suits designed for high gravity, lightweight but reinforced. Equipment stripped down to absolute essentials. medical supplies that Olivia had selected for maximum efficiency, communication gear that Lee promised would work through the atmospheric interference. Opening exterior hatch, Rachel said. The door slid open and Titan's crown's atmosphere rolled in. It was breathable, barely. The air tasted metallic and thick, but what hit them hardest was the weight. Rachel stood carefully. Her legs trembled under what felt like twice her normal body mass, because it was. Every cell, every drop of blood, every bone now pulled downward with relentless force. She took a step forward and nearly fell. "Move slow," Samuel advised, speaking from experience gained in the training chamber. "Don't fight it, accept it and work within it." They descended the ramp one by one. Derek stumbled and caught himself on the railing. Lee sat down halfway and scooted the rest of the way like a child on stairs. Yuki made it to the bottom and then just stood there, swaying slightly. The landscape around them was alien and harsh. Purple vegetation grew low to the ground, spreading wide rather than tall. Rock formations rose in jagged pillars, weathered by winds that carried unusual force. In the distance, mountains climbed toward a sky that was deeper violet than Earth's blue. "I can barely lift my arm," Derek said, demonstrating with agonizing slowness. "How are we supposed to hike 15 kilometers? "Same way humans have always done impossible things," Rachel replied. "One step at a time." They established a base camp near the ship. Just setting up the shelter took an hour. Tasks that should have required minutes stretched into extended ordeals. Lifting equipment, securing supports. Every action was a negotiation with physics. Lee made contact with the stranded expedition. The voice that answered was Vorin, the chess scientist leading the team. Their words came slowly, weakened by days of crushing gravity. "You actually came. We did not believe it possible." "We're here," Lee confirmed. 15 kilometers from your position. We're starting the trek tomorrow at first light. How is your team?" "Deteriorating. 3 are unconscious. Many are injured from falls. The small ones, the Quillans, they suffer most. Their bones break so easily here. Even breathing is difficult for them." Rachel took the communicator. "This is Commander Odom. We will reach you. Hold on." "Commander, you should know. Our shelter is failing. The gravity stress has created structural cracks. We estimate 1 day, perhaps 2, before collapse." The timeline compressed again. Rachel closed her eyes, feeling her own heartbeat thundering in her chest. 1 day. They needed to cover 15 kilometers, extract 15 critically injured scientists, and return, all while their own bodies broke down under sustained high gravity. "Understood," Rachel said. "We leave at dawn." That night they slept badly. The planet's rotation was 31 hours, making day and night cycles feel wrong. The gravity prevented restful sleep. Every position was uncomfortable. Rolling over required effort. Some of them gave up and just lay still, counting hours until morning. Olivia moved between them, checking vitals, dispensing mild painkillers. "We're already showing signs of strain, elevated cardiac stress, micro tears in muscle tissue. This is after 6 hours on the ground." "Can we do this?" Yuki asked quietly. Olivia looked out at the alien landscape, purple and hostile under strange stars. "We have to, so yes, we can." When dawn came, it painted the sky in shades of amber and rose that Earth had never seen. The team assembled their gear, helped each other into equipment packs, and faced the direction of the canyon. 15 kilometers. They took the first step together, and the weight of 2 worlds pressed down on their shoulders. 6 hours of walking had covered 3 kilometers. Rachel checked their position again, hoping the numbers would somehow be different. They weren't. The mathematics of endurance remained brutally honest. At this rate, they would need 30 hours to reach the stranded expedition. 30 hours of continuous movement under crushing gravity. Samuel collapsed against a rock formation, his chest heaving. "Break time." 5 minutes, Rachel agreed. They all sank down gratefully. Even sitting required conscious effort. The weight never stopped. There was no relief, no moment when the gravity relented. It was like being permanently buried under sandbags. Olivia distributed water and checked each team member. Derek's pulse was rapid and irregular. Yuki had developed a slight foot injury that she insisted wasn't serious. Samuel's breathing showed signs of fluid accumulation in his lungs. Lee's blood pressure had spiked dangerously high. Rachel's own body screamed complaints from muscles she hadn't known existed. "We're falling apart," Derek said what everyone was thinking, "and we're not even halfway there." Movement on the horizon caught Rachel's attention. She raised her hand for silence and pointed. Something large was approaching, moving with a gait that looked effortless despite the gravity. The creature emerged from behind a ridge. It stood perhaps 2 meters tall, but its body was wide and low, built like a living table. 6 legs, each thick as tree trunks, supported a massive frame covered in plates that might have been scales or might have been armor. Its head was broad and flat, with eyes positioned to scan the ground ahead. "Native life," Olivia whispered. "First contact protocol." "It's ignoring us," Samuel observed. The creature had noticed them but showed no interest. It moved toward a patch of the purple vegetation and began grazing, its jaw working methodically. Rachel studied the animal with new eyes. Evolution had shaped it for this world. The low center of gravity, the wide stance, the thick supporting legs, every aspect of its biology was an answer to the same question they were struggling with. How do you exist when the world is trying to crush you? "Look at how it moves," Yuki said. "It doesn't lift its feet high, just shuffles them forward, minimal energy expenditure." Derek nodded slowly. "And its body is horizontal, not vertical, distributes the weight across the whole frame instead of stacking it up." "We've been walking wrong," Rachel realized. "We're trying to walk like humans on Earth. We should be walking like we evolved here." They experimented with new movement patterns. Lower center of gravity, knees bent, bodies leaning forward. Shorter steps that didn't lift feet any higher than necessary. Using hands on the ground when terrain allowed it. The result looked awkward, almost animalistic. But it worked. The energy savings were immediately noticeable. "I feel like an ape," Samuel muttered, moving on all fours across a rough patch. "Apes are our cousins," Olivia reminded him. "They know things about moving efficiently. Maybe it's time we remembered." The new technique carried them another 4 kilometers before the next major obstacle appeared. The terrain descended sharply into the canyon system where the expedition waited. The drop was nearly vertical in places, requiring climbing equipment. Lee made contact with Voren while they assessed the descent. "We can see the canyon. How are you holding up?" "Not well." Voren's voice was weaker than before. "The Quillan scientist named Flutter stopped breathing 1 hour ago. Olivia revived her, but it was close. We are rationing oxygen now. The heavier ones need less. The light ones suffocate under their own weight." Rachel looked at the cliff face they needed to descend. Under normal gravity, it would be a challenging climb. Here, every handhold would bear double weight. Ropes would be stressed beyond their ratings. A single mistake would be fatal. "We're coming down," Rachel said. "Prepare for our arrival in 6 hours." The descent began as purple daylight started to fade. Derek secured anchor points using equipment that felt impossibly heavy to manipulate. The climbing rope that should have been easily manageable required 2 people to position. Each team member clipped into safety lines that they hoped would hold. Rachel went first. The moment she transferred her weight to the rope, she understood the danger. Her body swung like a wrecking ball, momentum carrying extra force. Her hands gripped so hard that within minutes they cramped painfully. Moving down meant fighting constant acceleration, braking with muscles that were already exhausted. Halfway down, her foot slipped. The rope caught her, but the sudden jolt sent pain shooting through her shoulders. She hung there for a moment, just breathing, reminding herself that stopping meant dying. Everyone below depended on her completing this. Everyone above needed her to prove it was possible. She continued down, meter by meter. The rock face scraped against her suit. Her arms shook with fatigue. But the ground grew closer, and finally her feet touched the canyon floor. The others followed. Yuki came down with careful precision despite her injured foot. Derek moved like a bear, slow but unstoppable. Samuel descended in stages, resting at each anchor point. Lee surprised everyone by being fastest, her smaller frame actually an advantage on the vertical surface. When they all stood at the bottom, bruised and battered, Olivia did another medical check. The results were worse than before. Heart strain had progressed in all of them. Derek's arrhythmia was pronounced. Rachel's blood pressure was in dangerous territory. They were running on willpower and stubbornness. "How much farther?" Samuel asked. 5 kilometers along the canyon floor, Rachel answered. Then we reached the shelter. Night fell across Titan's crown. The darkness was absolute, broken only by their portable lights. Strange sounds echoed through the canyon. More native life, creatures adapted to move in darkness under heavy gravity. The humans pressed on, following their lights like a lifeline. Hours blurred together. Walking became automatic, a mindless rhythm of step and breathe and step again. They passed rock formations that looked like sculptures, carved by wind that carried unusual force. They crossed a stream where water fell with the weight of mercury. Around a bend, lights appeared ahead. Not natural lights, artificial illumination from a dome-shaped structure pressed against the canyon wall. "There," Lee said, "the expedition shelter." They had made it. 15 kilometers of hell compressed into 1.5 days of continuous struggle. But as they approached, Rachel saw something that made her heart sink. The shelter's dome was cracking. Structural supports had buckled under the sustained gravitational stress. Through gaps in the failing structure, she could see movement inside. The scientists they had come to save were still alive. For now. But the shelter was collapsing, and they had minutes, not hours, before it came down completely. Rachel and Samuel reached the shelter entrance first. Through the transparent sections of the dome, they could see the expedition members scattered across the interior like broken toys. Some lay motionless, others moved with painful slowness. The Quillan scientists, small and bird-like, looked especially devastated. Their hollow-boned bodies were never meant to bear such weight. A crack ran across the dome's main support beam, widening visibly as they watched. The entire structure groaned under stress that had been accumulating for days. "We need to get them out now," Rachel said into her communicator. "The shelter won't last another hour." Inside, Vorin dragged themselves toward the entrance. The chess scientist moved on all 4 limbs, their methane-breathing apparatus struggling to function. When the airlock cycled open, Vorin looked up at Rachel with eyes that showed both hope and desperation. "You are really here. 6 humans against impossible odds. We thought we imagined the communications. Gravity-induced hallucinations." "We're real," Rachel confirmed. "How many can move on their own?" "Perhaps 5. The rest are too injured or too weakened. The Quillan scientist Flutter has stopped breathing twice. Olivia's colleague Finn, a Latari, has crystalline fractures throughout their structure. Many have internal bleeding from organ stress." Olivia pushed past Rachel into the shelter. Her medical training took over immediately. She moved from patient to patient, assessing with quick efficiency. 15 scientists from 7 different species, each with unique physiologies. Some breathed oxygen. Others required different gas mixtures. Some had internal skeletons. Others had exoskeletons or crystalline matrices. Treating them was like trying to repair 15 different types of machines simultaneously. "We can't move them all at once," Olivia reported. "But we can't leave anyone behind. The shelter is collapsing." Derek was already working on a solution. He and Yuki jury-rigged stretchers using salvaged equipment from the expedition supplies. Anti-gravity generators that no longer functioned in the heavy gravity were repurposed as structural supports. Atmospheric processors became makeshift sleds. "We make multiple trips," Derek suggested. "Move the critical ones first." "There isn't time," Lee said. She was monitoring the structural integrity readings. "Main support will fail in 30 minutes, maybe less. When it goes, the whole dome comes down." Rachel made the command decision. "Emergency evacuation. Everyone out, now. We carry them if we have to." What followed was controlled chaos. The humans moved through the shelter, physically lifting alien scientists who couldn't lift themselves. Samuel picked up 2 Quillen researchers, their combined weight still manageable despite the high gravity. Yuki supported an insectoid Vral scientist, helping them move when their own limbs couldn't bear their weight. Olivia made the hardest choice. Flutter, the Quillen who had stopped breathing twice, was unconscious and failing. Moving her risked killing her. Leaving her meant certain death when the shelter collapsed. Olivia wrapped the small scientist in protective padding and lifted her carefully. Flutter weighed almost nothing even in high gravity, her hollow bones and air sac respiratory system making her the lightest being present. Derek organized the mobile scientists into a chain, each one supporting the next. A chess scientist helped a Latari. A Trillic in a failing antigrav sphere was pulled along by a determined methane breather. Species that had never worked together learned cooperation in minutes because survival demanded it. The main support beam cracked with a sound like a gunshot. The dome shifted, settling lower. Support screamed in protest. "Move, move, move," Rachel shouted. She was helping Voren toward the exit, bearing much of the chess scientist's weight on her own overtaxed frame. Her legs felt like they would snap. Her heart hammered dangerously fast, but she kept moving. They poured out of the shelter into the canyon darkness. 12 scientists out, then 13, 14. Lee did a headcount, her light sweeping across the gathered beings. "We're missing someone." Finn, the Latari scientist with crystalline fractures, was still inside. Olivia could see the being through the transparent dome, lying near the back wall, unable to move. The fractures had spread through Finn's structure, making any movement potentially fatal. "I'll get him," Samuel said, turning back toward the entrance. The support beam failed completely. The dome began its final collapse. Samuel ran, moving faster than anyone should be able to move under 2.1 gravity. He reached Finn in seconds, scooped up the crystalline being with surprising gentleness, and sprinted for the exit as the ceiling fell. He dove through the airlock door as the shelter came down behind him. The crash was enormous, the sound of tons of material hitting the ground under excessive gravitational force. Dust and debris exploded outward. Samuel rolled, protecting Finn with his own body, and came to rest several meters from the destruction. For a moment there was only silence and settling dust. Then Finn's crystalline structure pulsed with light, their species' way of expressing gratitude. Samuel just nodded and carefully set the scientist down. Lee did another count. 15 expedition members, 6 human rescuers, 21 beings total, all alive, gathered in a canyon on an alien world that was actively trying to kill them. But they were exposed now. No shelter, limited supplies, and 15 kilometers from the ship through terrain they had barely survived crossing once already. Voren pulled themselves closer to Rachel. "You came for us. Your bodies are breaking under this gravity. We can see it, feel it in how you move, yet you came." "You needed help," Rachel said simply. "We could help, that's enough reason." "But why?" Voren pressed. "We are nothing to you, different species, different worlds. We would not have come for you. Our species cannot endure what you endure. This level of self-sacrifice is unknown in our culture." Rachel looked at her team. Derek was treating Samuel's injuries from the dive. Yuki was checking on the Quillen scientists. Lee was establishing communication protocols with those who could still speak. Olivia moved between patients, human and alien alike, treating everyone with the same dedication. "Maybe that's what makes us human," Rachel said. "We help because someone needs help. We endure because others need us to endure. The reason doesn't have to be complicated." Thunder rumbled through the canyon. A storm system was moving in, the same type that had hammered the ship during landing. Rain that fell like bullets, wind with crushing force behind it, and they were exposed with nowhere to hide. Rachel activated her communicator. "Team meeting. We have 21 beings who need to travel 15 kilometers in deteriorating weather. We're all injured. We're all exhausted. And we have perhaps 12 hours before this gravity kills the expedition members outright. Anyone have suggestions?" Olivia spoke first. "We move together. Anyone who can walk helps someone who can't. We share the burden." "We use the terrain," Derek added. "Stay low in the canyon where wind can't reach us. Follow the path we already know." "We don't stop," Samuel said. "Stopping means dying, so we don't stop." Rachel nodded. "Then we walk, together, until we reach the ship where we can't walk anymore." The storm broke over them as they began to move. 21 beings struggling against a world that had never meant for them to survive. But they moved forward anyway, step by painful step, because that was what survival required. The march became timeless, a blur of rain and pain and putting one foot in front of the other. Rachel lost track of how many times they rested, how many hours passed, how many times someone fell and had to be helped back up. The only thing that mattered was forward motion. The human team rotated carrying duties, spelling each other when muscles gave out. Derek carried a Trillic scientist for 2 hours before his legs simply stopped working. Yuki took over, her injured foot forgotten in the urgency of movement. When Yuki collapsed, Samuel stepped in. When Samuel's chest pains became too severe, Lee picked up the burden. The alien scientists tried to help despite their own suffering. Vorin used their remaining strength to encourage others, speaking words of hope in multiple languages. The mobile Vral scientist created a chain system where beings supported each other in a linked line. Even Flutter, the Quillen who had nearly died, regained enough consciousness to whisper encouragement. Olivia moved constantly between all 21 beings, human and alien alike, dispensing medication, treating injuries, monitoring vital signs. Her medical supplies dwindled to nothing, so she improvised. Bandages from torn clothing, splints from salvaged equipment, pain management through breathing techniques when the drugs ran out. On the second day of the march, Derek made a discovery that changed everything. While checking his equipment during a rest period, he accessed the ship remotely and found catastrophic news. "The Perseverance took more damage than we thought," he reported, his voice flat with exhaustion. "Landing struts buckled, hull integrity compromised. The ship can't launch." The words hit like a physical blow. Rachel stared at him, processing the implications. They were all stranded now. Human and alien together, trapped on a world that would kill them all eventually. "Can you fix it?" she asked. "Maybe, if I had the right parts. The expedition shelter had components I could use, but it's buried under debris now." Samuel sat up straighter despite the pain. "Then we go back, get what we need." "That's another 30 kilometers, Yuki protested. "Round trip, we barely made 15. "We don't have a choice," Derek said. "Without those parts we're dead, all of us." Rachel looked at the assembled group. 15 alien scientists in various states of medical crisis. 5 humans who were themselves falling apart, and 1 engineer who was proposing an impossible salvage operation. "Samuel and I go back," Rachel decided. "The rest of you continue toward the ship with the expedition members. Derek, send us the exact specifications of what you need. We'll bring it back." Olivia started to protest, but Rachel cut her off. "You're needed here. Keep everyone alive until we return. That's an order." The group split. Yuki took command of the main party, leading 15 kilometers of suffering forward. Rachel and Samuel turned back, facing another 15 kilometers of terrain they had already conquered once. They moved faster without carrying extra weight, but the high gravity was unrelenting. Every step was still a battle, every breath still labored. The storm had passed but left the canyon floor muddy and treacherous. They fell multiple times, caught themselves, got up, continued. Samuel spoke little, conserving energy, but during one rest period he asked the question Rachel had been avoiding. What if we can't find the parts? What if they're too damaged or too buried? Then we improvise, Rachel answered. Humans are good at that. They reached the collapsed shelter after 18 hours of continuous movement. The dome was completely destroyed, crushed flat under its own weight amplified by crushing gravity. Finding anything in the wreckage seemed impossible. But they dug anyway, moving debris that weighed twice what it should, shifting metal panels that required both of them working together. Samuel's engineering knowledge guided them to where the components should be. Rachel's determination kept them going when exhaustion screamed for rest. 6 hours of excavation yielded results. They found 3 intact gravitational compensators, 2 structural support cores, and a functioning power regulator. Derek had said he needed at least 2 compensators and 1 support core. They had exceeded the minimum. The return journey was worse. Carrying equipment under high gravity turned the trek into a nightmare of pain. They took turns bearing the weight, switching every kilometer because no one could sustain it longer. Rachel's body felt like it was tearing apart from the inside. Samuel's breathing had become dangerously irregular. But they kept moving because stopping meant everyone died. They caught up with the main group 12 kilometers from the ship. The reunion was subdued because everyone was too exhausted for celebration. Derek immediately began examining the salvaged parts, his expert hands checking each component despite the tremor of fatigue. "This will work," he confirmed. "I can repair the ship." The final 3 kilometers took all day. The combined group moved as one organism, each member supporting others, strength shared across species barriers. Humans carried aliens. Aliens encouraged humans. The distinction between rescuer and rescued blurred into simple survival. When the Perseverance finally came into view, several expedition members wept. Others were too depleted to react. The humans just focused on the final steps, the last few meters, the ultimate push to safety. Derek went to work immediately on the ship repairs. 18 hours of non-stop engineering, fueled by desperation and the knowledge that every minute mattered. Yuki assisted despite her own injuries. Samuel provided muscle when heavy components needed moving. Olivia treated everyone during the wait, stabilizing the most critical patients, managing pain, keeping people alive through sheer medical skill and willpower. Flutter, the Quillen scientist, regained full consciousness and began helping Olivia with the others despite being barely functional herself. The repairs took longer than hoped, but finally Derek emerged from the engine bay, covered in grease and exhaustion. "She'll fly, maybe not pretty, but she'll get us to orbit." Loading 21 beings into a ship designed for 6 became an exercise in creative packing. They helped each other aboard, moving slowly, carefully. When everyone was secured, Yuki took the pilot's seat one last time. "Launching in 3 minutes, everyone brace, this won't be comfortable." The launch was violent. The ship shook and groaned as damaged systems struggled against Titan's crown's crushing pull, but Derek's repairs held. The Perseverance clawed its way upward, fighting gravity with everything it had. And then they broke free. The crushing weight vanished as they reached orbit. For the first time in days, movement became effortless. Several beings actually laughed at the sensation of normal weightlessness. The Coalition fleet waited above, medical ships ready to receive the expedition members. But before docking, Vorin asked to speak to the assembled group. "You saved us," the chess scientist said. "Not because of superior technology, not because it was easy. You saved us because you refused to accept that we were unsavable. You endured what should have killed you, for strangers, for beings you had never met." Rachel, exhausted beyond measure, managed a smile. "We're all strangers until we're not." 6 months later, Rachel stood in the observation deck of the new Heavy World Response Facility on Luna Station. Below, in the training chambers, new recruits underwent high-gravity trials. Volunteers from across Earth, ready to join the humans who would go where no other species could go. Olivia joined her, carrying medical reports. "The doctors finally cleared me for active duty again. Took 3 months of physical therapy to repair the damage." "Worth it?" Rachel asked. Olivia looked at the image displayed on the side screen. The 15 scientists they had rescued, all recovered, standing together at a coalition ceremony. Vorin stood in the center, their 4 limbs steady, their breathing apparatus functioning normally. Flutter perched on another scientist's shoulder, her hollow bones healed. Finn's crystalline structure had been repaired and now pulsed with healthy light. "Every single step," Olivia answered.